Here we have the CEN Matrix R2. This has been fully refurbished. So this buggy is old. I've had it for quite some time. I got a couple of disgusting rollers and made one complete unit out of them. This one has HPI trophy buggy shocks. These are hot racing buggy wheels. It has a Duratrax Toro 3.5 and some HPI servos. Almost forgot the HPI trophy buggy pipe and header as well. Traxxas filter. But yeah, I replaced a bunch of the original screws with some of the stainless steel ones, and that's about it. I rebuilt this truck and raced it a few times with Anthony, but after looking at it again, oh goodness, we got a visitor. Excuse me, sir. But anyways, after looking into this, I remember that the one-way bearing in the pull start is faulty. It works, it grabs every now and again, as you can see, but that's not going to work out in the field. So I'm going to replace that and have this as a backup to race with come this weekend. I just tested it. Electronics work. It's not a strong servo, so brakes work pretty well. So I'm actually going to go ahead and see about starting it. Just put some fuel in it. Alright, let's see if it'll start. Even with this. Just try to prime it. Let's see. Yeah, so I remember that being an issue. So I'm just going to go ahead and replace that. So I pulled the engine. Like I said, I definitely was racing it out in the dirt, put it away dirty. That's really gross. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean this engine off. And then replace that one-way bearing. So, got the engine cleaned up a bit, and now that it's wet, I think there's no slipping on the one-way bearing. Now I have to decide if I want to switch it or not. since I have the engine out, I'm going to go ahead and pull the pull start off and at least look at it. Looks to be okay. But I'm going to replace it. And when I pulled this pull start off, I found this spring in there. And I can't understand where it came from. So it obviously came from somewhere inside here. It was right in the middle. So I don't know. I'm definitely going to use a new one-way bearing, or new to this vehicle. And now I'm trying to decide if I want to just replace the pull start. But another thing I noticed when I was cleaning the engine is that this boot is starting to become dry rotted. So what I'm gonna do is see if this one will fit. I know the engine works good, so worst case scenario, I'll just replace the carb. Yeah, I'm just gonna replace the pull start because I don't want to have any issues. I don't know anything about where this spring came from or what kind of pull start this is. So well, that spring is just going to be a mystery, I guess. But I did replace the one-way bearing, and there's zero issues with the pull start. So I'm going to go ahead and reinstall this after I test to see if that HPI boot will fit to replace this old stock boot that's dry rotted. Well, turns out that boot is the perfect fit. It's a little wonky from being in the package, but it's got a nice tight seal there, so I feel much better about that. So now this engine's ready to be reinstalled, and the problems were solved with it. So let's get this back in the buggy and then see if it starts up. Alright, so it's back together. Things are buttoned up, and I'm gonna try to start it. I replaced the one-way bearing in the pull start. That's the one-way bearing there. The spring came out of the pull start. I don't know from where, but things still work, so I'm not gonna ask any more questions. The grub screw that mounts the pipe was missing, so the pipe was just floating on the hanger. I replaced the fuel lines because they were old, and when I removed them from the carburetor and from the pipe, they broke off here and whatever, so the lines were old and I replaced them. And I think that's about it. Oh yeah, I replaced the boot. You can see here that the it's just super brittle. and there's holes. So it was time to go. This is the part number for the boot set and the O-rings from HPI. A lot of the older Duratrax and Dynamite and HPI stuff is a lot of the same size, so I figured when I found this it might work, and it does. It fits on there like a glove. It's just a little warped from being in the package for so long. But anywho, I'm gonna go ahead and try to start this now. Good that the pull start works. Let's see if it's primed. That wants to start. Maybe a new glow plug. Glow plug. It's a cold plug for the... This is what it is right here. It's one of these. So we'll see if this works. I remember this plug gave me issues, but we'll see if we can use it to get this thing started. I'm noticing a bunch of fuel on the motor that's leaking from the carburetor. So something's wrong here. Well, back to the drawing board. I wouldn't have known this was going to leak until there was fuel running through it. Bummer. I was able to get it to start and idle, but it was idling very high, and I'm not really trying to get this thing to continue to run if it's just going to leak oil, leak fuel, I mean. So I'm going to pull the engine again and see if I can figure out where it's coming from the carb. If it's coming from like a crack in any of the metal, or if it's just coming from a seal. So we're gonna pull the engine and see what we got going on. When I look at this, I see that it's wet where the fuel goes into the carburetor. So I'm thinking that it's leaking where this plastic housing is, and it's leaking down this way because there's not fuel on the other side of the engine, and if it is, it's around the carburetor. So obviously the carburetor is an issue. One of the issues was solved with the boot, but the other issue is where the fuel goes in, there's some sort of leak, and it's either here where it goes into the engine, or here where the fuel goes into the carburetor. It could be coming out of this needle too, but I really think it's leaking from here with this plastic piece. Well, I think I diagnosed the issue. And it's this medium range or low speed. Whoa, that's the high speed, never mind. So those go there. It's this here. The one that goes in here. These gaskets here, these washers, gaskets, are at the end of their life. They're almost hard like plastic. And there's no seal on them anymore, so that's where the fuel was leaking from, was this setting here. It was coming right out of this, and it could have been coming from here too, but it was for sure coming from this seal not being able to close the gap anymore. And I think that because most of the fuel that was leaking down was seen on this area of the carburetor here, and unfortunately this HPI carb doesn't fit. I also want to say that this is a Torque, not a Toro, so I just got to correct myself there. But I did find one on eBay, a little more expensive than I'd like to spend, but it'll be worth it to get this thing going. I've already diagnosed the issues thus far, so, and the engine still works quite good, so it makes no sense to just scrap the engine. And then I can use whatever I have left on here that's still good for parts. So I'm going to go ahead and put this off to the side for now. Won't be able to race it like I was intending to, but that's alright. At least I know where the thing stands. So, yeah. Thanks for coming along, trying to figure out what's going on with this vehicle. Hopefully this was a little bit of insight into how in-depth it goes to try to solve issues like this. But yeah. So we're stuck here on a carburetor issue. We'll come back and we'll resolve it. Turns out this spring might have some significance after all. After doing some research, I find that it seems to have something to do with the starting mechanism, so I'll hold on to that, and when we come back to this vehicle I'll do a full teardown of the engine and see what needs to be done, if anything's missing or not, and we'll deal with the carburetor, new carburetor. So stay tuned, you'll see this thing running for sure. I didn't put fuel in it for nothing. Yeah.